soul and the liberated soul, and about the Lord of the universe, as well as the Lord, so-called lords in the mundane universe. So the 75% energy is called Tripada Vibhuti, and 25% is Pada Vibhuti, and it is the internal energy of the Lord, whereas that is the external energy. The 75% energy is far more numerous in numbers. By number it is very big quantity, whereas the 25% is less. And not only that, the size, the planet size is also very big when compared with the other one. And it's mentioned that Prabhupada has given in the Bhagavad that the 25% energy is comparing it as like a bucket full of mustard seeds. And each mustard seed is a universe, and within that universe there are millions of planets are there. So if we imagine that, it's very difficult to imagine within the small mustard seed so many planets are there, and then there are so many number of such universes which is contained in the 25% itself. So then we need to imagine how much it will be there. That means it provides given that it is 3 times in number. And in that case, the planets are constituted by unalloyed goodness. There is no mix of passion or ignorance, even the goodness. It's unalloyed goodness. Whereas here it is a mixture of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And here the planets are eternal, indestructible, and self-illuminating. And Prabhupada compares that they are so illuminating that illumination is compared to millions of mundane suns. If you can imagine millions of mundane suns, how much power it will come, that much is the power of the illumination power of the internal energy of the Lord. And it is far beyond the material sky, and whereas that one is within the material sky. And another point is that the land is full of transcendental enjoyment and full of beauty and bliss, whereas the other one you don't find that. And there is no influence of time there. Whereas here it is under the influence of time. And then the next point is when we compare about the souls. The souls here, they are liberated souls, whereas there it is our conditioned souls. And here the inhabitants are free from birth, old age, disease and death, full of knowledge, free from all sorts of material anchorings. There is no material anchorings. Whereas there the inhabitants undergoes birth, old age, disease and death, and they don't have any knowledge also what they are undergoing. And nothing to do except rendering devotional service. They do only just loving devotional service with the Lord. And whereas here they work for themselves. The inhabitants are also same like the Lord, as external forms which are auspicious, infallible, spiritual and eternally useful. All the inhabitants in the 75% are the forms is same like the Lord, and they are eternal forms and auspicious also. The inhabitants are awarded by the Lord to be fearless. The Lord is awarding the inhabitants to be fearless, whereas here in the material world, the inhabitants are always fearful. What will happen in the next? And here it says it's avikara. The inhabitants are avikara, they don't change. Whereas here it's vikara, so it always changes the forms. And no need of any endeavor for getting happiness. And happiness is automatically derived. But whereas one has to work very hard, Prabhupada mentioned that one has to work very hard, they have to put their own hard labor to become rich. But again Prabhupada mentioned that even that richness, one has to be very fearful that whether it can be stable. It will change any time. And they are actually experiencing the Sandhini and Samvik and Vladimir English. Whereas here they hardly appreciate what is factual, existential and cognizable and pure happiness. It's very, whatever we experience in this world, it's just only a fraction of that. And the final comparison is about the Lord. Here also we are called, so they like the leaders and the so-called spiritual leaders, they are called as mundane lords. So when we compare with the Lord, with the mundane Lord, the Lord has eternal forms which are auspicious, infallible, spiritual and eternally useful. But these forms of the mundane lords, they are not auspicious, they are not eternal, they are not spiritual, and they are subject to change. The forms are subject to change. And the Lord is of immortality. Lord himself is immortal and he can award immortality to his given. This is a very important point. The Lord is immortal and he is the Lord of immortality, and he can award immortality to the inhabitants of this world. But whereas in this world, even those so-called immortal, and they cannot award the immortality also to the others. And Lord enjoys equally with his devotees. The Lord can award all his qualities, personalities to his devotees. This is one of the important points Prabhupada mentions. The Lord can give whatever is opulence can be awarded to the inhabitants of this world. But whereas the mundane lords, they never enjoy equally with whatever, even the so-called opulence they have, they never part with the other associates. The greatness of the Supreme Lord is so great which cannot be even imagined. And the mundane lords are not so great.
Regarding that mustard seed,
Yes,
I mean, what can you elaborate a bit again on that one?
Prabhupada compares that the mustard seed, like the 25% energy, that whole creation is like, imagine a bucket full of mustard seed. And from that mustard seed, if you take one seed, that seed is just a universe. And within that seed, there are millions of planets.
Yeah.
So if you imagine in that way, there are how many planets are within that bucket. And 3 times of that is the...
So whatever there in the mustard seed is that that is the 25% of this one,
Yeah.
right? So rest is like spiritual one.
That is 75% is 3 times of that.
So what the bucket is 25%?
Yeah.
3 buckets is
3 buckets, yeah, 3 buckets, yeah, 3 buckets.
Bucket full of mustard seeds is compared to 25%.
Yeah.
That means 25% is like bucket full of mustard seeds which you cannot count. When you imagine how much is 75%. So the idea of telling bucket full of mustard seeds is that it's a proper portion from Chaitanya. The idea of telling that it is that it is innumerable. You can't like count a bucket full of mustard seeds, say that you 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, technically you can. It takes how much time to count and to know how many mustard seeds are there. It's like an impossible task almost. So that is what is explained here. Even the material world cannot be measured. So what about the spiritual world? How much more it is going? That's the comparison. Why do we need to compare like this, the material world and the spiritual world? We are comparing the liberated soul and the conditioned soul, the Lord with the mundane Lord. So why do we need to do this comparison?
to know the
Understand
potential.
our position.
To understand our position.
So roadmap to where we are and where we have to go.
Yeah, it's a roadmap to where we are and where we have to go.
We can understand the kindness of the Lord towards us.
Yes, we can understand the kindness of the Lord.
We are so ignorable, but seeing the Lord gives us so many facilities. Opportunities. Very nice.
How great is our Lord?
How great is God? Okay. Why do we
Comparison leads us to improvement.
comparison leads to
Also hope there are more good people than
Yeah.
us.
There is a hope. Okay, good, nice. Basically, it actually, when we compare, like, all these points are quite relevant, whatever we said. When we compare, we actually have faith that we are. So, you see the circumstance of Bhagavatam, that when Bhagavatam is spoken,
The verge of death.
the verge of death, Parikshita is going to die. At that time, Bhagavatam is spoken. So, when Parikshita is going to die, when a person is going to die, then what is going to happen to him? What is happening to that person? The person is going to die, what is the situation?
So it lose all this material.
He's going to lose all his material. Which means that whatever he is thinking is his security, he is going to actually lose it at the time of death. His body, the relatives, his material facilities, or whatever he thinks as his security. Like throughout our life, we think that this is our security, right? So all that security is going to be wiped off at the time of death. So then where I have to place myself, what is going to secure me? So when this body is going to go away and whatever I think as security is actually going to go away from me, where should I give myself to? This is the question. This is the question of Bhagavatam. This is the question of Parikshita. That what is auspicious for a person who is going to die? What he should hear and what he should not hear. And what is his duty, where we should actually place himself? This is the most critical question. So unless we do this comparison, we will not be able to place ourselves with faith in the Supreme Lord. That it is not that I am going to lose something by death, but actually I am going to gain something by death. Normally death is associated with loss. Everyone says, oh, we lost this person, oh, this has happened, oh, we lost. And the person is also thinking, oh, I am going to lose my dear life. And when I lose my dear life, it's going to be a big problem for me. What will happen to my dependents? What will happen to my children? What will happen to all the property I earn, etc. So death is normally associated with loss. But when we make this kind of comparisons, then the process of leaving the body can be associated with not with loss, but with gain. And a gain which actually makes it worth losing what you have. That's more important. If we make some comparison, then we understand that what we are going to gain that it is worth to lose what we have. Yeah. So unless we make this comparison, it is difficult for us to understand. Because always we see only what is around us. And when we see what is around us, it looks so nice. Marriage looks so nice. It looks so nice. So we think that, okay, I am very securely situated here. So then what happens to me when I have to lose my body? So then we have to understand that it is worth losing this place, losing this body, losing this whole material arrangement where everything needs to be negotiated. It is trying to negotiate with the other class. So we can see in spiritual world there was a nice point here. I was just thinking about the point when this point was being read to Prabhu. There's nothing to do except rendering thanks to the devotional service. They don't need to negotiate for that time. We can eternally have our own. But that's our only job. So there's no need to find a slot for it. That is our slot. But material world means we need to find slot. Find slot, make some tough negotiation, go back. We need to find slot. So that's why these comparisons are so lively. Even though we know, like these points which are explained here, we know from the beginning we joined this context. This is not something new. We are reading these points again and again. We know these things from the beginning. We have taught these things, and we have taught these things many times. But then practically, when we actually list them to see, then we know that it is worth leaving this place. That what we are going to gain is something much, much more valuable than what we are having. And it also kind of disillusions us with our present situation. Sometimes we think, oh, my company is so good. Oh, my boss is so nice. Oh, my company is taking care of me very nicely. When we do this comparison, that illusion, that curtain of illusion is removed. That no mundane boss or no mundane lord is nice. A very simple comparison is there, that a mundane lord never enjoys equally with his subordinates. However nice a mundane lord is supposed to be, he never enjoys equally with his subordinates. And what about the Lord? He not only enjoys equally with his subordinates, in fact, he even places his subordinates in a higher position than him. So what are we losing to gain what? So the idea is to get disillusioned with this material situation. The idea is to not have some hope or faith with this material situation. This is a very powerful tool when we compare and contrast. Because subtle level, these things are happening. At subtle level, we have these ideas which actually attaches to this material world. We think really that this is a nice place. We think really that my company is so nice. Sometimes we think my company is bad, but then we think that that person's company is nice. So let me leave my job in this company and then join that company. Or we become envious of that person. See, he is having such a nice job. He can do whatever he wants. I am not having such a nice job. I cannot do whatever. Nobody is having a nice job. So these shackles of illusion has to be destroyed. So this comparison helps us to actually destroy these shackles of illusion. Because these shackles of illusion are very nicely maintained because there are so many facilities which come with this material world. And when we get into these facilities, we think that this is nice. When we upgrade from a small car to four-wheel drive, we think this is nice. It's natural, we think that it's nice. But the idea of these comparisons is to actually cut this knot of material existence. It's not nice. Of course, we can make it nice by utilizing things in the service of the Lord, but that's a poor compromise. All said and done. Because we can do much better by placing ourselves in the spiritual world rather than trying to remain in the material world and then trying to utilize everything in the service of the Lord, which is good. But that doesn't become an excuse for us to remain in the material world. Oh, I am utilizing everything in the service of the Lord, so let me remain in the material world. So that's why this comparison is really good. We move to the next group. Or any discussion, any more discussion? Fine.
Hare Krishna. So we got the verses 21, 22 and 23 the last three in this section, and the comparison was devotee and non-devotee, how Prabhupada has given the comparison in between devotee and non-devotees, how they see the Lord's energies. So here, qualitatively, devotee is equal with the Lord. Non-devotee, he thinks he is equal to Lord. Actually, when here devotee in verse 21, Prabhupada has explained, devotee is his devotional service to the Lord, whereas the non-devotee, he wants to lord it over the energy of the Lord. And verse 22, devotee see Purusha as the supreme controller, so he surrenders. Whereas non-devotee, he thinks he is the controller. And verse 23, where devotee and Mayavadi comparison done, here he worships Lord because he knows ingredients are born out of bodily limbs. Actually, Brahma in this verse is establishing, don't think I created the things. When it was created, when I was born, I was not doing anything, and I had to take from the lips of the Lord. That means there in this verse itself, Brahma is establishing everything comes out of Lord. So he is born out of body limbs. Whereas Mayavadi, it is no use of worshipping, everything is nothing but the Lord. No need to worship, everything is the Lord. So, here the next is fruits, flowers. Prabhupada gives an analogy here that earth is there, the fruit flowers comes from the earth. For example, in groundbreaking ceremony, we use all the things which comes from the earth to worship the earth actually. So here, same way, when we involve in the devotional service, we get the things from what Lord has created and we worship with those ingredients to the Lord back. Here, impersonalist, he concludes that he is the Lord himself. There is another comparison here, analogy Prabhupada has given. Ganga worshipped by Ganges water. So we have seen the Rishis, Munis and all giving the Rupya and all in olden days from the Ganges water, taking offering it back to the Ganges worshipping. So here, same way, the Lord's energy is used for the worship of the Lord. They falsely puffed up remains non-devotee. So always they compare themselves equal to the Lord. So they are puffed up that we have become Narayana, we are Lord and all. So they always remain puffed up and they fall up. And devotional service is great gratitude and nothing different from the Lord. Actually, devotee thinks it is a chance for him to serve the Lord by using the ingredients given by the Lord. So there is a gratitude and without recognized by the Lord. So non-devotee or a person is not recognized by the Lord because he compares himself to the Lord. And there is one more that how an example of our personal experience of a gratitude. So when we were actually doing some worship or some form of worship at all, but we were not knowing that Krishna is the Supreme, we have to do everything for Krishna's service and all that was not known. But when we came in 2002, when I came to Bahrain, first time I was looking for satsang and I was very much interested in Vishnu Sahasranam. So I approached and that person, he said, we are mostly family members, we get together. I said, my wife will join me later, so I would like to join. Then he said, mostly it's family members. Again he repeated. Then I thought maybe after my wife comes, I have to join. Now I am not supposed to join, so I did not disturb him further. Then in our office, I approached a Muslim friend who speaks Kannada. And then he said, he gave me the Bhagavatam Prabhu's name and all. So then I approached him and immediately he said, come tomorrow to our house. We have a Bhagavad Gita satsang class. And I went there and then got attracted. And I'm very grateful to the family who gave this. But the devotees, devotees of the Lord, they are always eager to serve others and to give the Lord's knowledge and his, whatever they have got from their seniors, they want to give it to the others. This mood we will not find in others. That's what I felt, and I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to Prabhuji, Guru Maharaj, and all the devotees here who have given Krishna to us, and also to the Prabhupada Acharyas.
Prabhuji, 2-3 times when you said non-devotees, we are categorizing. You are also categorizing the jnanis who wanted to merge unto Lord, also under non-devotee category.
Prabhupada does not say directly like that, but mostly he says
also lords it over, and Brahman lording it over. Material person lords it over a house or a land or something.
Even if you have all the knowledge, if you don't give it back or say Lord is supreme and He is the, if you don't have that understanding, there is no use of any worship. I feel like this is from the purport of reading the purport, unless you give it back.
Actually,
One more comment.
Yes,
everything is nothing but Lord. From the second canto, forget the first one, no use of worship, that is different.
yes.
But the second one, that everything is nothing but Lord, to some extent is true.
It's true, not to some extent.
It's true. It's true. So the question is, now there is some sense in that also, that everything is Lord's energy and Lord like that. In qualitatively it is same, but not in quantity.
Yeah.
So can we say that they are also to some extent correct, or
Here where the
in a way they are right?
Leave that, sir.
Here where the gnani part comes actually. He knows that everything is created by Lord and everything belongs to Lord and everything is Lord. And when it comes like that, one of the movies I can show movies probably.
The floor is yours, whatever.
When you are taking to Krishna, everything is okay.
There's another Bhakta Kumar, I don't know many of you heard. It was a very nice movie. In that they have shown, I think Nanadeva, somebody before becoming the devotee, he was a gnani. So he was inside a Lord Shiva's temple and so many Shivlingas are there. So he wanted to sleep and there was no much space there and he was keeping one of his leg on the Lord Shiva and he was sleeping actually. So probably later he said everything is Lord's Lord, everything belongs to Lord, everything is Lord. So what is there if I keep my leg on this, like that's something that I remember. Then Bhakta he explains actually about Lord is great and all like that. Then he becomes the devotee and his perception changes. This I remember. So
I
maybe
remember
they-
the same sequence in such a way that somebody comes and asks that person, how come you are keeping your leg on a Shiva Linga? He's Lord. Then that person asks the question, okay, then tell me where I should keep and where the Lord is not there.
Yeah, this is the
That was the
I think it's one of the consciousness basically.
yeah. No, you start comparing when you feel you are to the level of the Lord, then for you there is no difference. Then you think you are Lord.
So can we say that everything is nothing but Lord, and the devotees they think that and they have this feeling of gratitude that everything is Lord's and Lord's energy and everything. So that gratitude helps, and that is the difference between the devotee and Mayavadi, because Mayavadi also have that element, which is Canto 2 is full of that, is everything is Lord's only, and everything is energy of the Lord. In one way, to think like that one is God is also to some extent, I think there is an element, right? So, but not in full and this, but the the main thing of gratitude, yes, it has come from God, it has come from Krishna, that is not there. But rest of the things are there intact.
What they are thinking that everything is Lord, it's correct, but it is not complete.
Yeah.
It is correct, but it is not complete.
So we can
Read the line.
Half a truth is as good as a lie basically.
So can we say like that everything is Lord, but it is not complete? I just wanted to.
Yeah, there's some. See, the main point here. See, the main point here is that accept that there are superior and inferior. We accept that there is gradations in this energy. We don't accept that everything is Lord means that everything is same.
I also.
So that's the main thing. Second, that we make differentiation between the Lord and the Jiva. Okay. But the Mayavadis and the Jnanis, they don't make this differentiation. Even though here it is used the word Lord, the Mayavadi thinks that everything is Lord, but I am the Lord. You understand? No? That's where the problem comes. The problem comes that everything is Krishna. If everything is Krishna or everything is Brahman, then I am the Brahman. So in effect, what it means, everything is mine. You understand? No? Everything is for my enjoyment. Even though it looks like a very small difference, that okay, they are also 90% correct, only one statement they are differing, but it's a huge difference because it actually puts this question that who is the enjoyer? Who is the Purusha? Okay. So then they conclude that I am the Purusha, and that is the reason for material existence. The whole idea that I am the Purusha, I am the enjoyer, is the reason for material existence. So what is the use of all this mental speculation and coming to the same conclusion which actually brought you to material existence? So what did you achieve by all that conclusion? So the idea is that you get out of material existence by knowledge, not that the knowledge brings you back into the same place where you started. That is the reason why Tattva says that Jnanis, they fall down because they don't have respect for the lotus feet of the Lord. This whole episode that, okay, show me where is Lord. Okay, Lord is everywhere. So let me put my feet on Shivalinga. This is nonsense. Because the idea of gradations of energies is not there with the Jnanis. The Jnani thinks that the Shiva is the deity and the footrest is same. And that's nonsense. Because deity is, we know that Archa Vigraha means that he is the Supreme Lord himself. Right? It's not that it's a representation of the Supreme Lord. It's not an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Archa Vigraha is the Supreme Lord himself. He is present there. And because he has the ability to change one energy to another energy, which are all his energies, he can actually change Achit to Chit, Asat to Sat, and Nirananda to Ananda. He can do that. So he can manifest himself completely in the Archa. So for us, to say that I will put my feet on Krishna's deity is something unimaginable. Something unimaginable. But the Jnani does it so easily because he's so stupid. So his knowledge actually makes him stupid. His so-called knowledge of the oneness, his so-called study of the scripture, his so-called analysis of Vedanta, everything just makes him stupid. That's the problem with the Jnani. So that is why actually, if you see one of the purports, Prabhupada says that a grain of faith is more valuable than colossal faithlessness. Because this Jnani's system of analyzing the whole thing, that everything is Brahman, is actually foundationally faithless. Because he finally wants to establish that I am the Brahman. His whole idea of saying that everything is Brahman is simply demoniac. It's not that he realizes that everything is Brahman. It's foundationally demoniac. Because he wants to come to the conclusion that I am the Brahman, so everything is mine. That's exactly what Hiranyakashipu was trying to establish. All the great demons, they try to establish exactly the same thing. So that is the reason why Prabhupada says that atheists and Mayavadis are the same. Atheist says there is no God. Mayavadi says I am God. So in effect he denies the existence of God. main point. If one becomes ready to listen to the devotee, then anybody can be saved. Mayavadi, anybody can be saved. As long as he is open to listen to the devotee. That's the reason why preaching movement is so important. Preaching to them in a very intelligent way, destroying the illusion is so important so that they can actually understand their position and then they can. So, makes it clear. No, it's not that they are like 90% right and 10% wrong. That one concept which they don't understand makes them 100% wrong, even though superficially it looks as if they are 90% right. Because their motive is without gratitude. That's the main point. They don't have any sense of gratitude because they don't have any sense of superiority and inferiority. They don't make that gradation. Just because they don't make that gradation, everything gets spoiled. But Vaishnava philosophy means we accept Parasya Shakti, Vividheva Shuri. The Lords have many energies, and within these energies there is variety. Something is inferior, something is superior, and something is Tatashta. So all these things we accept. So it's not that we accept the variegatedness within that oneness. That's our philosophy. And that's a very crucial aspect of our philosophy. That we accept the variegatedness within that oneness. Our vision of oneness has in background understanding of the variegatedness. That is how we see oneness. Vaishnavas see oneness like this. We all accept that everything is Krishna. But within that everything is Krishna, we make a distinction between his external energy, his internal energy, his marginal energy, and he himself.
So how do Mayavadis coexist? Because if somebody has this feeling, ultimately that I am the Lord, which leads to that. And then they are together also, because here in amongst devotees is the service, the devotional service, right? Devotee service. But there all the Mayavadis are of this opinion that ultimately I am the Lord. So even for them to coexist, and in their rest of life also, it's like, I am everything.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult conclusion.
Yes.
Which can really affect their relationships and all, right?
Yeah, but see, the main
They will fail, even if they will fail in their household life, or whatever life, right?
See, basically, anyone who is born in this material world, the default setting is that he is a Mayavadi. Because this is the default setting of taking birth in the material world. You take birth in the material world, you are Mayavadi. Because you come with this idea that I want to be the enjoyer. And that is Mayavadi philosophy, that I want to be the enjoyer. So that is the reason why Bhagavatam says, Parabhavastavad abhodhajato yavan jigyasata atmavitum yavan kriyas tavadam vai karmatmakam yamshari. That everything in this material world is defeated. What I said is correct. Everything in this material world is defeated. Why it is defeated? Because the default setting is Mayavada setting. The default setting is the competition to establish myself to be the Lord. That's the reason why everything in the material world is doomed to fail. Nothing will succeed in this establishment.
We have this you think that we are the Lord. I'm just taking this statement.
Yeah.
That the default setting of everyone in this material world, the default setting is that I am the Lord.
Yes.
Is this the default setting?
Yes.
Self-centered.
Yes.
Very self-centered, basically.
Self-centered, yeah. Now
There's a percentage of us which is a Mayavad, and then basically, I mean, if I'm right, as we progress in our spiritual life, we decrease the percentage of, and then we go towards being a devotee. Eventually, we try to perfect it.
Better one person speak. I will have, like she was answering, so better listen to her.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I'm just saying.
And also you should listen to her.
At least here.
Whether you are Mayavadi or not.
So, what I was saying, like, what I've understood from the statement that they're Mayavadis is that we are born, being born in the human body is a mistake in one sense. That means when we try to say that we are the Lord, it means that it's envy, no? That the envy aspect is coming into the picture. And as we progress in the spiritual life, then we decrease the percentage of Mayavadi and we shift. And when it's 100%, then we go back to Godhead or...
Yes, it's perfectly right.
Born in human body is a mistake. After the material world, human body is the best.
Yeah, it's the best mistake you can do.
Remaining okay, that means remaining
It's not, remind why this is a worse mistake. This is the best mistake you can do, or the least mistake you can do.
No, actually, human birth is not a mistake. During that mistake is
Taking human birth is a mistake also. That's what, why we compared Ekpath Vibhuti and Tripath Vibhuti. The idea that you are the part of Ekpath Vibhuti is a mistake. Whether you have human body or demigod body or Brahma's body, it doesn't matter. The idea that you are existing in Ekpath Vibhuti itself is a mistake. It's a mistake. That one has to clearly accept. That's what I said. One has to get disillusioned with the material world. One should not have any hope about this material world. So this is a mistake. First we have to admit this, that I am here, it is a mistake. Then the question is how to rectify this mistake. The best opportunity to rectify this mistake is given in this human form of body. That's what Prahlad Maharaj says. Tathapi arthadam andruvam says. It is andruvam. It is not fixed. This human body is not fixed. It's a small window which is available for us. So you have to make it meaningful. You have to make it arthadam. You have to make it meaningful. And that is explained by Narad Muni in Vyasadev's conversation. Narad Muni is the first canto. Or Narad Muni says, Tasevayito, Prayaketa Kovito, Na Labhite Yamatam Kovita. Then this, for that reason, one should endeavor, which you cannot get by going up and down in this 14 planetary system. That's what you are supposed to endeavor for. That is why human life is awarded. As long as that consciousness is there, then everything is useful. But when that consciousness is not there, then it is a problem. It's a problem. So that's the reason I am saying that default setting is that what is a Mayavadi?
Mayavadi means this philosophy by Shankaracharya.
He has articulated philosophy, but that is the basic setting. It's not that Mayavada was introduced by Shankaracharya. He just articulated that consciousness as a philosophy. Okay. So we say that this is Shankaracharya's philosophy, but that is a default setting of everyone who is born in this material world.
Even the purpose and somewhere he told me is bona fide. Shankaracharya is bona fide.
Yeah, of course, Shankaracharya is not sure. He is the best of Vaishnavas. He was asked to preach something and he came and he did his job. That's it. So it's not that he is not bona fide. He is bona fide in the sense that he just did what he is supposed to do. But his philosophy which he taught is not bona fide. He is bona fide, but his philosophy is not bona fide.
like even Buddhas.
Like
even the
Buddha.
Buddha.
In this one, Hari, so his scripture should be there in the library.
Yeah, but for whom to read? That is also a question mark. Not for everybody to read.
Confused.
Mayavada Bhasha Sunile.
Yes,
So it's good to put it library like Bhaktivedanta library and some research library so that people can
Compare.
read it and then defeat it. Not read it and get confused. So most of the time we are already confused. So we need not get into that physical factor unless it is very much. And proper in his purports very clearly analyzes, like now we are now analyzing Mayavada philosophy. So clearly analyzes and then defeats it.
but finally he is telling Krishna is the ultimate.
Yeah, but that is true. His final teaching was like that. But his bulk of his teachings are he was asked to teach bogus philosophy. So he taught bogus philosophy.
Buddhism he came from.
Yeah. So there's a whole sequence that why it happens.
No, it was established complete. He drive out the Buddhism from India.
Yeah, because that is the closest philosophy to atheism.
Then only the Bhakti can come and we put the platform in it.
That is true. See, that is why we are not, see, we have to understand, we are not, we don't have any problem with Shankaracharya, but we don't accept his philosophy. Okay. It is an evolutionary philosophy, all that is fine. Okay. But we don't accept his philosophy, we don't say that his philosophy is correct. Our position should be very clear. We accept Shankaracharya, but we don't accept his philosophy. Okay? Because it came next to Buddhism because it is very close to atheism. Atheism says no God, and he says that everybody is God. So everybody is God means there is no God. So it's very close, it's next door neighbor to atheistic philosophy. So philosophy we don't accept. We don't accept it. One of our aims is to actually defeat Mayavada philosophy. The moment we get a chance, we destroy it. The first available chance, we destroy Mayavada philosophy.
What Mayavadi said about Prabhupads and about devotees rejecting what is their opinion and others sampradaya?
Mayavadi said that they are sentimentalist. That's their Chaitanya. Prakashananda Saraswati was saying that they are sentimentalist. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said what he said. When he was a Mayavadi, what he said. He told Mahaprabhu that you are young, you are beautiful, you are singing, you are dancing, so you are going to fall down.
So that's the
That's what they think. That they are eternally in the process of always going to fall. That's how they think.
One question, like when the Shankaracharya's philosophy had come, which was next Buddhism, it came for a reason because the people of that age were in that consciousness.
Yeah.
So, Prabhuji, actually, it's not been an evolution of consciousness. Because we see nowadays when we preach, for example, or we meet people, or we discuss our philosophy. So we do find people of that consciousness to which will befit also when we discuss that, see, like, we can't just present our philosophy on the table and say to some people that Krishna is the Supreme Personality and so on and so forth. So even when we preach, I feel personally, I find that the transition is also important, right? We give them in bits and pieces instead of just putting it on the table. It's hard for them to digest from the consciousness that they've come from, right? I hope I'm
Yeah.
my question.
So the practical point is just ask them to chant. The practical point is that ask them to chant. So everybody will chant, but Mayavadi will chant. They will chant more seriously than you. Okay? Because they think that it's all I am Krishna, let me chant. Even if they don't have that consciousness, they just want to do something nice, so they will chant. Okay? The moment they chant, then the whole equation changes, because we were discussing in the morning that chanting means that asking for service. The moment you chant, that means you are asking for service. The moment you ask for service, you accept superior and inferior. The moment you accept superior and inferior, your consciousness is starting to change.
Prabhuji, why wasn't chanting introduced at the time when instead of like, I have nobody to question, but I'm just saying, like logically, why wasn't chanting introduced at the time of Buddhism and cleaning the slate kind of a situation? Why wasn't chanting introduced?
It was introduced, no, like finally what Shankaracharya said, he was referring to that, no, he said that, he said chant Krishna's name. So he introduced that point, that chant Krishna's name, okay, but he just touched it in the end. And then he said that whatever I taught is nonsense, just chant Krishna's name. And then he just packed his bags. But the point is that, see, even Mayavadis, they accept devotional service. Okay? They accept devotional service as Abhideya, not as Prayojana. Okay? They think that till I become Lord Shiva, I should pray to Lord Shiva. This is their philosophy. I will pray to Lord Shiva, or I will pray to Parvati. Okay, as my mother till I make her my wife. This is how they think. I pray to her, mother, and one day I become Shiva, I make her my wife. So they accept devotional service as something which is incidental in their path, which is like an abhideya. It's not a privilege. But we accept devotional service as abhideya and privilege. That's a difference. That's a difference. And chanting is there. It's not that chanting is not there. Because without, Jiva Goswami explains in the Sandarbha that without adding bhakti, no process can work. Without adding the chanting of the holy name, no process can work. It has been there in all yugas. Okay? And it has been there in all processes. For example, like in Satya Yuga, you will do like 10,000 years of meditation. Okay, you will do all that yoga stuff and that this, pratyahara, pranayama, that this, dhamma, everything. And finally, after you come to the stage of samadhi, what they will do? They will give you the holy name, or they will give you the name to do the dhyana. Okay, they will say, okay, do dhyana on the Brahman. Okay, maybe secondary name or maybe primary name, but the name will be. Okay. There's some vastu they have to meditate upon. To be the name. Okay. You come to Treta Yuga, so the whole process of yajna is all names, like yajna means mantra. Without mantra there is no yajna. So mantra is what? Mantra is names. You come to Dwapara Yuga, this again Archana process. Archana process means what? The deity and the names. So without names, no process will work.
This holds like Muslim, Islam and Christianity parallel.
No, they also take names, no? Allah Akbar, what they are saying, they are saying Krishna is great. So no process will work without the name. Either they may take the primary name or they may take the secondary name. Okay, like for example, Christians take the name like Oh Father, Oh Father. So it's a name. The secondary name, it's not a primary name. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that the primary names and there are secondary names. The primary names are directly denoting Krishna, and the secondary names are generic names like Father, like Oh Great One, Oh Most Powerful One, Oh Omniscient. These are all secondary names. And the primary names are Krishna, Govinda, Gopala, Madhusudana. So either primary name or secondary name. Any religious process you have to add the name. Without adding the name, no religious process will work. But in Kali Yuga, the point is that without gymnastics you are getting the name. So you think it is cheap. That's the whole point. In other yugas, you have to qualify. Like for example, if you have to sit as a Brahmana to do yajna, you have to go through so much difficulty. You have to go through so much training. After going through so much difficulty, so much training, you will be given the right to sit and perform the yajna. So to get the name, you have to really, struggle. So then when you get the mantra, you think that, oh, I achieved something. You feel that, you got something which is valuable because you work for it. But in Kali Yuga, because Mahaprabhu's mercy, that you are going on the road and someone catches you and tell you, hey, chant Hare Krishna. We think, oh, these fellows are disturbance. Yeah. So that's the difference. Without name, no process will work. Primary or secondary. You have a spiritual process, you have the holy name. Without that, nothing will work. So there is no doubt about that it's not that the holy name is not there now or it was not there before. Or it is always there. Throughout consistently the holy name is there. Yeah. Okay. So now we are going to move. facility to do yajna. That's it. He has no other role. He is not a controller. He is not some supreme or something like that. He is the facilities to do yajna.
They are offering it to the Vishnu. They don't think that?
No, they say that he is the facilities to do yajna. So which is exactly what Brahma is going to explain in this set of verses. That he is going to explain that the facilities for doing the yajna came from the lips of the Lord. He will say that what are the different facilities. He will say that the correct time, the kala, the desha, the patra, flowers, that, this, everything. So he will say that everything I got from the lips of the Lord. So the facilities to do the yajna is Vishnu himself. That's what the Mimamsa philosophers say. That Vishnu is the maintainer, maintenance is done by yajna, and Vishnu is the facilities to do yajna. Okay. And then he simply awards the results of yajna because he gives the facilities to do the yajna and he simply awards the result of yajna. That's what is Vishnu. He has no other role. Okay. Now, after explaining that that Vishnu is the source of the ingredients to perform yajna, then actually Brahma will go on to defeat the Mimamsa philosophers by actually pointing out that he is the basis of the whole existence and he is the actual enjoyer of the yajna. Okay. So this way actually Brahma establishes, yes, true, that he is the source of the ingredients of the yajna. But it is not that he is simply the source of ingredients of the yajna and nothing more. But he is the enjoyer. That's where your point comes. That the yajna is offered to him. So Brahma will establish that, and he will actually destroy the Mimamsa conception of the Lord.
So the Mimamsa philosophy, they don't have the concept that when they are doing yajna, for whom they are doing it, they don't have anything.
So they are doing yajna to get facilities. That's it.
No, facilities means ingredients they have already got it.
Yeah. So they have the different demigods. So you pray to Indra, then you become powerful. You pray to Varuna, you get a lot of wealth. It should be explained here now. If you read this section, this will be explained. It is actually an explanation of how Mimamsavadis think and then why they are wrong. This whole section is like that. Okay. So we'll read the translations from 24, okay, which is what starts this whole explanation. So, start for 24.
For performing sacrificial ceremonies, one requires sacrificial ingredients such as flowers, leaves, along with the sacrificial altar and a suitable time.
Other requirements are utensils, grains, clarified butter, honey, gold, earth, water, the Rig Veda, Yajurveda and Samaveda, and 4 frames to perform the sacrifice.
Other necessities include invoking the different names of the demigods by specific hymns and vows of recompense in accordance with the particular scripture for specific purposes and by specific processes.
Can I answer your question? That there are hymns which actually invoking the different names of demigods and vows of recompense. There are particular purposes and processes, and it's all given in different scriptures. So all this actually he derives from, Brahma derives from Vishnu, from the lips of Vishnu.
Go ahead. Thus, I had to arrange all these necessary ingredients and paraphernalia for the sacrifice of the personal bodily parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by invocation of the God's name. The ultimate goal, Vishnu, was gradually attained, and thus compensation and ultimate offering were complete.
So this is where actually Brahma explains that it's not that yajna means that you actually pray to the demigods, then demigods give you what you want, and then the whole business is completed. That by taking the names of different demigods, that the ultimate goal is to attain Vishnu, and he is gradually attained by the process. And that when he is attained by the process, and when everything is offered process of yajna as what? He actually explains it as Ishtakamalu. You understand? You remember this? He explained it as Ishtakamalu. That it can actually bestow whatever desires you have. The process of yajna can bestow those desires unto you. Okay? But then that chakram, evam pravartikam chakram, that chakram, it has to be offered to Vishnu. Yajnata karma anyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. Tadattam karma kauteya muktasanta samachara. So Krishna establishes that this same philosophy, the same discussion is there in Bhagavad Gita. It's an expansion of the discussion. In Bhagavad Gita, it is just condensed that Brahma just gave the process of yajna to the Prajapatis, and then he said that just do it. So here the whole full explanation of this whole process is given. That Brahma explains that in the beginning of creation, that nothing was there, so these things were prepared, so I got it from the limbs of Vishnu, and then you will also see that he gave it to others. So you will see that. Please read on.
Thus I created the ingredients and paraphernalia for offering sacrifice out of the parts of the body of the Supreme Lord, the entire of the sacrifice, and I performed the sacrifice to satisfy the Lord.
See, here he establishes that the Lord is the entire of the sacrifice, and the sacrifice is performed to satisfy the Lord, not satisfy our own desires. It's just an incidental thing that by the process of sacrifice, our own desires also get satisfied. But the ultimate goal of the sacrificial process is that it is performed to satisfy the Lord. So this is where the Mimamsavalis get defeated. Okay. The Mimamsavalis earlier say that this is all Vishnu needs the facility to perform yajna. And why we should perform yajna? Because we need to get our facilities. So we perform yajna. So Vishnu just provides those facilities and then keeps quiet. That's it. But Brahma says no, it's not like that. He is the enjoyer and he should be satisfied with the performance of yajna.
My dear son, thereafter, your 9 brothers, who are the masters of living creatures, perform the sacrifice with proper rituals to satisfy both the manifested and the non-manifested personalities.
Okay, so this is where, actually this is what Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita. So directly he comes to this part, that Brahma created the process of yajna and gave it to his followers. And then he said that just follow this process of yajna. Okay.
Now, 9 brothers.
9 rishis.
Now you plus?
No. The 9 brothers, 9
rishis.
No. 9 sons of Brahma. You will study that kind. The 9 sons of Brahma who were born. Brahma created 9 sons, like along with Narada. He created Manichi, he created Kardama. So those 9
And daughters of the Kardama married the
yeah. So he actually created 9 sons in the beginning.
Prajapatis.
Yeah. Some of them are Prajapati, some of them did not become Prajapati.
Yeah.
So you study certain.
Thereafter, the Manus, the fathers of mankind, great sages, the forefathers, the learned scholars, the Daityas and the mankind perform sacrifices meant to please the Supreme Lord.
Okay. So everyone, no one is exempt from the process of performing sacrifice.
All the material manifestations of the universe are therefore situated in his powerful material energies, which he accepts self-sufficiently, although he is eternally without affinity for the material world.
So this answers the question of Brahma, that what everything is situated in, the whole creation, what it is situated in. Okay, so he explains that it is situated in his powerful material energies. Okay.
Also that he accepts everything not because he needs it, he's self-sufficient.
He is self-sufficient.
By his will I create, Lord Shiva destroys, and he himself, in his eternal form as the personality of Godhead, maintains everything. He is the powerful controller of these 3 energies.
Okay, so here he answers the question that who creates? Narada's question was, who is the creator? Are you the creator or someone else is the creator? So he answers the question that who is the creator?
My dear son, whatever you inquire from me, I have thus explained unto you. And you must know for certain that whatever there is, either as cause of effect, both in the material and spiritual world, is dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Okay, so now he clearly explains that the Supreme Lord is the cause of all causes. Okay, so this section, actually Prabhupada uses this section very nicely to establish few things. So what are the things Prabhupada establishes? What is the main subject of this section?
Position of the Lord.
What is the main subject matter of this section?
Lord is
Beneficial of sacrifice.
The main subject matter of this section is
ingredient provided by
no sacrifice. Sacrifice is for the Vishnu.
sacrifice.
Sacrifice Vishnu.
That's yajna is the main subject of this section. Sacrifices. That's the main subject of this section. So naturally, what Prabhupada does, Prabhupada uses this section to do a few things. Okay. So the first thing he does is that he establishes the authenticity of Sankirtana Yajna in Kali. So this is the first thing he does. Prabhupada clearly in his purport he establishes the authenticity of the Sankirtana Yajna in the age of Kali. So you can see that in his purpose he consistently does this. Okay. And then what is the next thing he does? He actually destroys the concept of pseudo-sacrifice. Pseudo-sacrifice means sacrifice in terms of material understanding. Sacrifice in terms of bodily concept. Okay. So he describes this whole concept of pseudo-sacrifice in his purpose. Okay. Where he actually he discusses various things. And then he also he points out the futility of this enjoying mentality. In the material world. So these three things in this section Prabhupada does very consistently. Okay. We'll read some portions of the purport so that we can see some sample of all the three. So whatever is highlighted in blue, you can continue to read. Okay, the purports, there are some sections which are highlighted in blue. Just continue to read the sections. So where did we stop? Who was it? I think it comes back to it. It comes back to it.
Such expert Brahmana priests are very rare in this age of corruption and war, and therefore in the present age only the yajna of chanting the holy name of the Lord is recommended.
Any such sacrifice undertaken in this case as a matter of show may simply be a cheating process by the clever priest or but such a show of sacrifice cannot be effective at any stage.
So he says that all this other sacrificial process doesn't work. So it all becomes to simply show what.
Gross material science cannot divert the real purpose of human life. It can only increase the artificial needs of life without any solution to the problems of life. Therefore, the way of materialistic life leads to the wrong type of human civilization. Since the ultimate aim of life is spiritual realization, the direct way of invoking the holy name of the Lord, as mentioned above, is precisely recommended by Lord Chaitanya, and people of the modern age can easily take advantage of this simple process, which is tenable for the condition of the complicated social structure.
Okay. Because the purpose of sacrifice is what? To get facilities. And the material scientists say that there is no need to go through this process. We simply get facilities by advancement of science. So Prabhupada says that so you just simply sacrifice your time and energy in industrial enterprise. This is this materialistic sacrifice, pseudo sacrifice, which we are all trained to do. That we simply try to sacrifice our time and we are assured that by sacrificing our time and energy and intelligence in the industrial enterprises, we can get all our facilities. So Prabhupada says that this is not going to work. By invoking the holy name, everything will be done. So this is the comparison between the pseudo sacrifice and the actual sacrifice which needs to be done in the age of Kali.
People in general are always anxious to have peace of mind or peace in the world, but they do not know how to achieve such a standard of peace in the world. Such peace in the world is obtainable by the performance of sacrifice and by practice of austerity.
The whole world is engaged in sacrificing energy for advancement of learning, social upliftment, economic development, and plans for total improvement of the human condition. But no one is interested in sacrificing for the sake of the Lord, as it is advised in the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, there is no peace in the world. If men at all want peace in the world, they must practice sacrifice in the interest of the Supreme Proprietor and Friend of all.
So, Prabhupada makes this point very clear that as long as we are following this act of being engaged in sacrificing energy for advancing in learning, social upliftment, economic development, that we can never be peaceful. Yes.
You're saying that the Mimamsa philosophy believes that Vishnu is a facility for doing yajna, and we are of course saying that he's ultimate beneficiary for the sacrifices. So Roji, the books that they follow is not they reject the Bhagavatam, the Mimamsa followers or thinkers. They don't because anybody who will read the Bhagavatam is quite explicitly explained that Vishnu is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices. So they're not reading the Bhagavatam.
Yeah, they don't accept that. They don't accept that. See, till Mahaprabhu came and established that Bhagavatam is the natural commentary on Vedanta Sutra, people are just.
When you started with this, like sacrifices, that might be stressed by Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, somewhere in the notes also, that this section describes, and one thing you were describing on the material and the material cause and the efficient cause.
Yes.
So actually this section describes that.
Yes, yes.
But when you mentioned sacrifices, so it looks like Prabhupada has, since the Lord is the cause for the material and the ingredient and all that, so Prabhupada has interpreted it in like, we should be now learning sacrifice, because we should have that attitude of gratitude, right?
Yes.
Because Lord is given
Yes,
all the
yes,
things.
yes, yes.
So he has interpreted it this way. So coming to that, any other philosophy, the same thing can be interpreted in so many different ways.
Yeah.
That we may not get the right picture, they may not get.
Yes, yes.
So
Osho has interpreted Bhagavad Gita in a different way.
Yes.
And these days, nowadays, the Swaminarayan interprets same Bhagavatam in a different way.
Yes. No, but generally, Mimamsa philosophers don't accept the authority of Bhagavatam. They don't accept the authority of Bhagavatam. They simply study Mimamsa Sutras. Like we have Vedanta Sutra, we have Mimamsa Sutra. So they study Mimamsa Sutra. That's what they accept as their authority.
That is not a part of our basic.
Yeah, that is part of the Vedic philosophy. Like we have 6 darshanas. Mimamsa is one of the darshanas.
6 systems.
The 6 systems of Indian philosophy, Mimamsa is considered one of the philosophies. But it is called as Purva Mimamsa, preliminary conclusion. Because if you actually observe the material world in a superficial way, you will come to the conclusion of Mimamsa philosophy. And that's what the whole world has come to a conclusion. So Mimamsa philosophy is how the whole world works. That you just do something which can be beneficial for you. And by doing that thing which is beneficial for you, you can eternally remain happy. That's the whole idea that the Mimamsa philosophers promote, and that's how the whole material world works. That I do something which will give me some benefit. And if I keep on doing the right things, then I will keep on getting benefit. if I keep on investing in the right stock, I will keep on getting profit. Okay. Or if I keep on changing my job to the right companies, I will keep on getting more money. So the whole idea is to keep on doing the right thing and you will get benefit and you can be happy. But it never happens that you keep on doing the right things. It never happens. So in fact, this Mimamsa philosophy is so strong. In 11th canto, there is a whole section where actually Krishna speaks to Uddhava simply to destroy Mimamsa philosophy. The whole section of verses which actually Krishna takes Mimamsa philosophy. He says Mimamsavadis say like this, and then he keeps on saying why they are wrong. Because that's how anybody who has some preliminary understanding of the material world will always think the way the Mimamsavadis think. So these 6 darshanas, they are actually very practical. They actually are, they actually how we normally think. We think, oh, it's Vedic, it's philosophy, something old. No, it's not like old. Every actual aspect of these 6 darshanas is how we think in the material world. All of them, all the 5 are Nirishwara. The 5 except Vedanta Sutra, as explained by Vyasadeva in Bhagavatam. Rest of it are all Nirishwara. They don't accept God. And that's what we are in the material world. We don't accept God. Or they accept God for namesake. Just like when Prabhupada says, he uses the word order supply. Accept God for order supply.
Very fortunate project because, like you said, the Bhagavatam was established by 500 years ago. In a sense, as a commentary on Vedanta. So I think to be having this opportunity to understand that this is it, because I think before that probably people were not so clear about the.
Yes.
I think this is proof that this is really the golden age.
That's really the contribution of Mahaprabhu. And that's really the contribution of Prabhupada. Without Prabhupada, we will never understand Bhagavatam like this.
That's what I often find in Prabhupada's purpose, that 500 years back, Mahaprabhu's chanting of the holy name, which is a Yuga Dharma, he has that in his mind, Prabhupada. So somehow or other in the purport, we will find that thing in the purport. Whereas in the translation and all, we may not find sacrifice, we may not find all these things. But in the Prabhupada purport, that thing will be there.
That's the reason why, actually, the system of learning any philosophy is actually like, for example, like you go to Sri Vaishnavas. When they say that they have read Bhagavad Gita, they simply have read Ramanuja's explanation of Bhagavad Gita. They don't have anything to do with the verse. No philosophical study studies the verse. They don't have anything to do with the verse. They simply focus on what the Acharya has said. Like Shankarites, they don't worry about the verse. They don't worry about Krishna says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhu, Matah Sarvam Pravartate, Imatva Bhajante Mam Buddha Bhava Samarvitaha. Krishna is standing there and saying that I am the source of everything. They don't worry about what Krishna says. They simply focus on what Shankaracharya says. Shankaracharya says, Aham means self. Self means Brahman. Brahman means you. So they just stick to this. This is the way philosophy is studied. It's not new to our system. This is how traditionally philosophy is studied. You simply be changed to how your Acharya explains philosophy. You've got nothing to do with the words.
That's how Sampradaya
That's how Sampradaya is established. That's how philosophy is studied.
But we isn't that stupid because in the beginning
That's not stupid.
No, but we say like Bhagavan Vacha, so we say that. So when we say, we are actually saying that it's the Lord is saying that. How are we saying Aham means I, like?
That's what I'm saying. That is how philosophy is studied.
No, but that's not the right way.
No, that's how we also study philosophy. No, like we also study philosophy the same way. Like we study philosophy simply focusing on what Prabhupada says. I am saying the general system of studying philosophy is that you simply study the Acharya.
They also object that we accept what Prabhupada said, but they don't accept Prabhupada, that's why they don't accept what is
That is true, but I am saying the general system of studying philosophy is that you simply focus on, I am just answering him, we don't see the verse. the general, and that is a general system of studying philosophy. It's not like only ISKCON people do like that. It's a general system of studying philosophy. That if you want to study philosophy, you simply see what the Acharya says. And then you comment on the Acharya's commentary. You don't do anything on your own. That's how philosophy is studied. That everybody agrees. Thankarates agree, Ramanujites agree, everybody agrees. That's our system. If you want to study philosophy, everyone agrees this system, that you have to simply focus on what the Acharya says. And we are fortunate to have Prabhupada, because Prabhupada says the right things. And he also says them contextually. You can't find any other Acharya's commentary which is so contextual. Like now in this purport, Prabhupada is talking about, like the previous purport, Prabhupada is talking about scientists. Right? You don't find it in Vishwanath Chakravarti's purport that he's not talking about scientists. But Prabhupada talks about scientists, Prabhupada talks about politicians, Prabhupada talks about sociologists. Like in this purport, Prabhupada is talking about sociology. So that's something very unique to Prabhupada's purport. So it's simply.
So it is so much Acharya specific. Then while debating, and there is another debate with saying, because the translation and the verse, that Bhagavan Vacha is there or Arjuna Vacha or that is there, we cannot refer to that because that is different Acharyas and
But the Acharyas are referred to it, no? See, when the Acharya does, what he does is that he says, this Bhagavan is saying, what are you talking about, Aham? So the Acharyas refer to that. So by referring to Acharyas, you will actually present your arguments in an infallible manner. The moment you want to analyze the verse, okay, then you have to bring your fallible understanding into the verse. That's the reason why even when we study Prabhupada's purports, like it's very important that we actually see Prabhupada and then you understand Prabhupada. You don't try to understand, the Acharyas, like even the previous Acharyas. You don't try to understand the previous Acharyas. You simply try to understand Prabhupada. And then you benchmark the previous Acharyas using Prabhupada. Don't do the reverse.
you go back.
Basically, you have to do like this. That you have to benchmark the previous Acharyas using Prabhupada. You should not benchmark Prabhupada using the previous Acharyas. Like sometimes it's now very fashionable to read, Acharya's commentaries in ISKCON. It's not nothing wrong, but I'm just saying that there's a mood to do it. And Prabhupada himself established that mood. That first you need to accept Prabhupada, and then you should accept that Prabhupada is correct. Then you read the previous Acharyas. Then if there is some apparent difference in how Prabhupada talks about a verse and the previous Acharya talks, like for example, let's say Vishwanath Chakravarti talks about a verse, you simply stick to Prabhupada. You don't start thinking whether Prabhupada will be wrong, this Vishwanath Chakravarti is correct. It's not up to us to understand this, because if you study all the 4 different 5, because Prabhupada was using about 6 purports to actually write his purport, his one purport. So he has given the essence of 6 Acharyas. So he knows what he is doing. So sometimes in the process of studying the previous Acharyas, we can do this kind of silly mistakes. Like I was taking Bhakti class in Mayapur, and one devotee, he came and he was sitting in the class with Prabhupada's Bhagavata movement and Vishwanath Chakravarti's Bhagavata movement. And he was comparing the translations word to word. Oh, Prabhupada said this, Vishwanath Chakravarti. Prabhupada said this, Vishwanath said this. So I told him first to close this book. We are here to study Prabhupada's purport. If you want to study Vishwanath Chakravarti's purport, this is not the place. You close the book and get out. Of course, it's nice devotee, you close the book. But this is how we understand Shastra. Simply stick to the Acharya.
So the onus is on the Acharyas more than I'm just saying, if there's a loyal disciple for another Acharya who really wants to understand, but he's not getting the right essence, he still will stand a chance to maybe get into the right path.
See, the point is the 4 Vaishnava schools, if you are in any of the 4 Vaishnava schools, you are fine, you are okay. There's nothing wrong. But within the Vaishnava schools, again, like I was explaining that within the So there is no dispute in that point.
In the principle.
In the principle there is no dispute. It's just that how I explain things is what is the best way to explain. So as long as you are in one of the four Vaishnava Sampradayas, okay. But then practically we see that the momentous work which is done by Prabhupada, and practically we see his empowerment, that he is so empowered that he has spread the whole movement all over the world, which none of the acharyas have done from any other parampara. And it is natural that, and Mahaprabhu has come to establish that movement, it is natural that everyone will gravitate towards that. So there's nothing wrong.
Also, like the children approve it. It's the same text, same book and all. But when children we speak, the children say, my teacher told me like this.
Yeah.
So they don't say book says like this.
Yeah.
They say my teacher told me like this. So whatever we say,
Yes.
in the book it is written like this.
Yeah.
You have to study, they will say,
Yeah.
oh, my teacher told me like this.
This is
That's it.
No, that's the way to study philosophy. That's a natural thing that you simply stick to your acharya. That's how philosophy is studied. And that's why it is said that Yasyadeve Parabhaktir, Yatadeve Yataduru, Tasya hi Katta Prakashante Mahatma. Unless one has implicit faith in the acharya and the Supreme Lord, then only the important purport of all the Vedic literature is revealed. That is how you understand Vedic literature. Having that faith in acharya. This is how Prabhupada explains it, and this is it. And then, of course, Prabhupada gives all the tools to actually focus and destroy everything. It's not like we should stop. We are already 10 minutes over time.
That's right.
That also even this proposal also there. How this around for maybe for some other class people. Not even
No, it's not meant for us. It's not for regular. We are regular. Prabhupada wanted us to study books.
comparing and all.
Comparing is.
It's very simple. If we actually go through Prabhupada's purport a few times, we can see Prabhupada actually does this. Prabhupada compares this. I'm saying that in this section, Prabhupada, if it's Vimamsa, it's exactly Vimamsa of the philosophy. That, the world, engage sacrifice of advancement of learning. This is Vimamsa of the philosophy. Nothing like it's not that it's not there. It's exactly there. Okay, we'll stop here. Okay, so please read to the end of the chapter. And in this section, whatever we read, please try to go through these statements where actually Prabhupada establishes the authenticity. These 3 points, establishing the authenticity of Venkateswara, destroying the concept of Sudha sacrifice, and